Hey everybody, and welcome back to some more Feed the Beast Unstable. Last episode, we were working on setting up a brand new Cursed Earth mob farm specifically for spawning Endermen and specifically for generating large amounts of Ender Pearls, to the point now where we have 411 Ender Pearls inside of our simple storage network ready for us to use however we like in today's episode. And the first thing that I want to do in today's episode is probably something that we should have done at the end of the last episode, and that is create a few of these single chunk loaders from the Chunk No Go Bye Bye mod, which is a perfect name for a mod, but essentially these work to essentially keep a single chunk loaded even if a player is not in that chunk. Now, real quick, before we actually make that, you may notice that we have a new visitor inside our base. It is a massive corrupted slime. I believe that the reason for this, as I think I mentioned before, is due to the fact that we did a little bit of supercharging over here in a previous episode. That is something that I forgot to do when making my sword. I didn't supercharge the Crimson Steel there. Nevertheless, we can always supercharge another sword in the future. The good news is that we are going to get quite a nice amount of corrupted slime from all of these little corrupted slimes, and that is going to help us out quite a lot with what I want to work on later on in today's episode. But for now, as I mentioned, I want to go ahead and see if we can't make a few of these single chunk loaders. They're fairly easy to make once you have a large number of Ender Pearls. Simply a regular old enchanting table, which of course does require a standard Minecraft book, which does require a little bit of leather, and it also would seem that once again we're kind of running out of space inside of our simple storage network. I think I did mention increasing the size of these crates between episodes. I haven't done that yet, but it is still on my list of things to do. Now, we don't currently have any leather, but we can craft 5 rotten flesh into 2 rotten leather, and then we can go ahead and smelt that up nice and quickly over in our doubling furnace here to get 4 leather, make ourselves a book, and then craft that up into an enchantment table, and then finally up into the single chunk loaders. Nice! So let's go ahead and sleep here, and then we'll head on through to the mining dimension, which is where we want to put down our first single chunk loader to make sure that no matter what, the builder from RF Tools here, excuse me, how did he even get here? I'm fairly certain that the mining dimension is always... Did he walk through the portal, maybe? That's quite possible, actually. I was going to say the mining dimension is always daytime, so there's no way that he spawned here, but it is quite possible that he spawned underground and then walked through the portal that we have in our basement to then come through into the overworld. Quite bizarre, but nevertheless, if you press F3 and G on your keyboard, you will get the chunk boundaries. So each chunk is 16 by 16 blocks, and you can kind of see where each chunk is. You want to make sure if you're going to put down one of these single chunk loaders, the thing that you're trying to chunk load is inside the chunk that the single chunk loader is in, right? Even though putting down the single chunk loader here is pretty close to the builder, because it's not in the right chunk, it will only load this chunk, and thus will not keep everything over here fully loaded. It's usually a good idea actually to make sure that you check the chunk boundaries before you build something, because otherwise what you can end up doing is building, for example, a portal that crosses 2 chunk boundaries. Not the end of the world, but it does mean that you'd have to put down 2 single chunk loaders in order to load both of those chunks. For now, though, we can go ahead and just put this down really anywhere inside of this chunk, and that should keep everything in that chunk fully loaded, even when we head back through to the overworld. And I don't know if it's strictly necessary, but I do also want to put down a single chunk loader over by our wither. I've yet to see the wither despawn, but I am a little worried that we're a bit too far away from the wither, and so just to be on the safe side, I am going to go and put another single chunk loader over by the little pet wither that we set up in the last episode. As you can see, he is still chugging away here, trying to kill us, but being unable to thanks to the tempered glass that we have about. I have gone ahead and built this kind of at the cross-section of 4 different chunks here, but I think if we do this and this, that should cover pretty much all of the chunks that the wither inhabits right now. He can't really get into this chunk or this chunk, so that should be pretty good for the time being. I'm also thinking that it wouldn't be the worst idea at some point for me to set up another portality portal just for getting us over to this area of the map. You know, we come over here quite a lot, and it is quite a trek from our base all the way over to this area, or at least it's more of a trek than it needs to be, especially when we can just use a little bit of redstone flux and a portal to get us here instantaneously. Nevertheless, now that that is taken care of, let's go ahead and press F3G again. That's going to go ahead and hide all of the chunk borders, and then we can also go ahead and put most of this stuff back into our system for the time being. And now I want to talk about what I want to work on in today's episode, and that is a new automated farm over in the new slot that I've created at the end of this new path that I've built between episodes. I quite like this. I'm not too sure that it fits in with the theme of our entirely oak wood building that we have right now. I think it matches the theme of the lower levels of our base, and so at some point in the future I might go ahead and kind of redo this top section of the base to kind of match the theme that we have here and downstairs. But I really like this. We have these old brick slabs from Embellish Craft. These are made from old bricks, which are made from weird bricks, and a netherrack, which are made in turn from bricks and get more netherrack. So it's essentially just a bunch of clay and a little bit of netherrack. And on top of that, we also have these dark stone bricks, which are made by crafting 4 dark stone, which we've been getting from our quarry over in the mining dimension. You can see we've still got 623 of that lying around if we wanted to expand this path out even further. The pillars here are also made of the dark stone, and then we have little fancy lanterns from X-Light as well. I think these are really nice. I think they look quite cool, and overall I'm quite happy with this path here, but that is not what we're working on in today's episode. Today, I would like to work on a little bit of automated farming, and I want to do it with the Create mod, which is a mod that was added in the newest version of FTB Unstable. It's a really nifty mod that you may have seen Nick and I play if you watch the Janky Skyblock series, but essentially we're going to use it for trying to set up an automated farm using the mechanical harvester. Now, the way that you power things in the Create mod is kind of different to the way that you power things in most other traditional mods. Most mods are kind of uniform in their acceptance of redstone flux, so for the most part, any generator from any mod is kind of interchangeable, and you can use power generated from any other mod to power any mod's machine, right? However, with Create, all of the machines are powered using rotational energy, and there are a few different ways to generate rotational energy. One way is through a water wheel, which is something, again, you may have seen if you watch the other series. That's not what we're going to do in this series, though. I'd like to mix things up just a little bit, and today I want to set up a wind turbine to generate the rotational energy that we're then going to use to power a farm that can harvest all kinds of different crops, from sugarcane to the fluffy puff seeds that we have, to wheat, to potatoes. Really anything that you can plant normally in Minecraft can be harvested by this mechanical harvester, and once you have the wind turbine set up, no extra power is required. It doesn't require a constant supply of fuel, nothing like that. It just spins away, generates power, and automatically farms, which is really cool. So the way that we set this up initially is using a mechanical bearing, a rotation chassis, and some white wool. These are going to allow us to set up our wind turbine. So these are made with oak wood, cobblestone, an iron ingot, and then a shaft. Shaft is made from andesite alloy, which is made with andesite and iron nuggets. I don't know if we have any iron nuggets, and so I will go ahead and craft some of those real quick and then craft that up into the andesite alloy. How much andesite do we have? 510. Okay, so that should be more than enough to get everything done in today's episode, which is always good. We can then go ahead and craft up the mechanical bearing like so, just so long as we have some wood. Of course, I forget that the Simple Storage Network does not like putting in the planks, even if we have them. So we'll do this, and then that should be good to go. Iron ingot, shaft. Oh, I need to make the shaft, not the andesite alloy, my bad. We are also going to need quite a bit more shaft in today's episode as well, but we'll come back to that in just a second. Once we have ourselves the mechanical bearing, the next thing is the chassis. Again, very simple recipe here. Andesite alloy, some oak logs, and some planks. Once again, none of that stuff is going to shift click in to our system. That is fine. We can do it manually like so. And then finally, we need some white wool. Right now, I don't think we have much in the way of wool, but what I did remember between episodes is that we can craft white wool using the product of our fluffy puff seeds, that being the fluffy puff itself. And so if we go ahead and just craft up a little bit of white wool here, we should be able to set up our first wind turbine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some cobblestone, and we're going to head out to our farming area just as soon as we sleep, which you can do at exactly 1833, which is right about now. And then now if we head on back over to the new farming area, we can set up our first wind turbine. So I think what I'm probably going to end up doing eventually is building some kind of structure over here, because I think having just a wind turbine floating in the air might look a little bit out of place on its own. But if we set up maybe some kind of like barn building, or just even some kind of fenced area with like a roof of some description, we can kind of make the wind turbine look a little bit more like it's supposed to be there, right? But nevertheless, what we're going to do is we're going to go quite high up. I don't think that these wind turbines care how high you go. I'm only putting them up here for aesthetic reasons. And then all we're going to do is we're going to start with the mechanical bearing, which you want to put down like this. Now, you do have to put this down up against a block because you want it facing in the direction that your wind turbine is going to be in. So you want this little like brown face pointing this way. And then from there, we're going to get our rotation chassis and put that down again like so. It's at this point that I then remember that we need a little bit of slime. Thankfully, we do have 4 corrupted slimes on us, and we can craft those corrupted slimes over into regular slime balls. And essentially, from there, you want to right-click each side of the rotation chassis with those slime balls, trying not to fall down as you go. That's usually a pretty good idea just in general. And then if we go ahead and do the same thing here and here, what we can then do is we can put the wool onto the rotation chassis for our blades, for lack of a better term. So essentially, all we want to do here, and again, you can do this as small as you like. You can just do like 1 piece of wool on each side. I'm going to make it look a little bit nicer by putting 3 pieces of wool on each side. I don't know necessarily if or at all how much this affects the rotational energy that you get from the wind turbine. However, there are fairly easy ways to increase the amount of rotational energy that you get once you have a little bit of rotational energy. And so it really doesn't matter how slow your wind turbine is at the start. All that really matters is that you get some rotational energy. And so all we're going to do is put down our last bit of wool right about there. We then need to get ourselves a lever, which thankfully we have everything it takes to make in our inventory, like so. And the last piece of the puzzle here is to get rid of some of this cobblestone, and then finally to put down the lever onto this mechanical bearing, give it a quick flick, and boom, we have a rotating wind turbine, and out of the back of that wind turbine, we can pull rotational energy into shafts. So if we get rid of this and we do that, we can now use shaft to take that rotational energy from the wind turbine down to any machines that we want to power with rotational energy. Pretty cool, right? So now we do need to get down. I'm going to go ahead and try and do this without dying. You can go right through those, which is something to bear in mind. But essentially, all we're going to do now is run that shaft power over and down to one of these guys, a mechanical harvester, because when provided with mechanical power, the harvester will harvest all mature crops the blade runs into and reset them to their initial growing state. So essentially, it will harvest any wheat or any sugarcane or any potatoes, whatever you plant, it will harvest it and then it will replant the original crop. So you can automate this all with just the mechanical harvester. It doesn't require any replanting. The harvester itself will do the replanting automatically once the crop has been harvested, which is pretty cool. So if we head back, there are a few things that we need in order to get this show up and running. We need to get ourselves a mechanical harvester. We need the sticky mechanical piston. We need a fair number of piston extension poles, and we also need a gear shift. So I'm going to go ahead and craft all of these up. None of these require anything crazy, and most of them are just more iron, more wood, some buttons, some shafts. We do need iron sheets here for the mechanical harvester, and iron sheets are made with a mechanical press. This is something we are going to have to make here real quick. So let me see if I can show you guys how this works. So we'll craft some piston extension pole, and then we'll see about making our mechanical press here. We also need a cogwheel. Cogwheels are also going to come in quite useful later on in today's episode. But for now, we'll make one of these like so, and then we'll craft that up into a mechanical press. Hopefully we have almost everything it takes. It looks like we are missing a little bit of andesite alloy. That is fine. We are also missing inventory space. What is the recipe for upgrading our crates? Annoyingly, the recipe... So this is what I kind of dislike about this mod, is that we have a golden crate, and the diamond crate and the obsidian crate are bigger than the golden crate, but to make an obsidian crate on its own doesn't require any diamonds. But if you want to upgrade a golden crate to an obsidian crate, you have to go via a diamond crate. You can't go straight from gold to obsidian. You have to upgrade a gold crate to a diamond crate, and then a diamond crate to an obsidian crate. And I don't think we really have that many diamonds. We don't. And so what I'm going to do, guys, real quick, is I'm going to go away. I'm going to make 4 obsidian crates, which we can actually do right now before going away. But I'm going to make 4 obsidian crates with the obsidian that we have, and I'm going to move all of our items from these 4 golden crates into the 4 obsidian crates, just to give us that little bit more space that we need to actually be able to craft inside of our simple storage network. Alright, so a little while later, we now have 4 obsidian crates, and as you can see, we now have a full crate and a bit worth of space, as opposed to 4 full golden crates, and so we should, at least for a little while, be able to continue using our simple storage network without items getting stuck in the crafting terminal here. And another thing that I forgot to mention that I did add between episodes are these 2 extra storage drawers for things like netherrack, for I believe it's marble up there in the top left, as well as for ender pearls and for excess charcoal, just because these are all things that were kind of backing up our crates previously, but now they're going into drawers and then being voided if we have too many of them. But nevertheless, back over to the mechanical press. This is now everything it takes to make one, and the way that this works is much like everything else within Create. It runs off of the rotational energy. So all we have to do here is grab some iron ingots, and we can essentially press those iron ingots into iron plates, which we can then use to craft up our mechanical harvester. Now, currently, our rotational energy is quite high up in the sky. It's all the way up there by our wind turbine, and preferably we would like that nearer to ground level. Now, the way that we move rotational energy is through shaft, but shafts can only move either horizontally or vertically. That is where gearboxes come in. Gearboxes allow you to move shafts on a right angle. So we can either make this gearbox or this gearbox. There are two. They're made in exactly the same way. You can then craft one into the other. One essentially crafts from horizontally this way to horizontally this way. The other converts horizontally this way into vertically this way, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, don't worry, you will see in just a second once we make our first gearboxes. Real quick, we do need about 10 million buttons in today's episode, and so I am going to go ahead and make quite a lot of those right out of the gate here, just so that we don't have to keep coming back to making buttons over and over and over again throughout the course of today's episode. And of course, just like every other wooden item in the game, for whatever reason, it doesn't shift click into the crafting terminal. That is fine. Once we have 4 cogwheels, we can craft up our gearbox like so. Nice. So as I mentioned before, this essentially allows us to change the direction of our shaft power. So let's grab some shaft and let's head on over to our wind turbine. Now we are going to need at least one of these gearboxes to be a vertical gearbox, because we want to take our rotational energy and move it down towards the ground. Now I don't have any building material on me, so let me quickly grab a little bit of cobblestone, and then all we're going to do here is, once again, we're going to build up, but now we're going to put our gearbox right onto that pre-existing bit of shaft right about there. We can then bring the shaft down. So now it's taking that shaft power from what was horizontal and it's bringing it vertically down to the ground. Nice. Once we get to the ground, we do have to route this shaft power into our mechanical press. Now you'll notice from the little icon here that the mechanical press has its input for shaft power on the left. So we are going to have to transform this once again, and I think that is going to need yet another vertical gearbox. And so we'll grab that, we'll come down, and all we're going to do is we're going to put our mechanical press, for now, I think right about here. We will, of course, move this in the future because we are going to have a farm here eventually. And actually, I think we actually want this like right there instead. But then we're going to bring the shaft power down like so. And I've actually put this one too far back. That is fine. We can move it over to here. And then we're going to have another gearbox that goes right here. And once again, that's converting the vertical shaft power to horizontal. And then finally, we can connect up our mechanical press with that shaft power. Nice. Now, finally, all we have to do to actually get some of these sheets is put a lever down next to the mechanical press, like so. Throw some iron under the mechanical press. For now, we'll do maybe like 8. And then if we flick the lever, that should plunk down and turn all of our iron into iron sheets. Nice. So I think 8 should be enough because, as shown before, we really only need the 1 for the mechanical harvester and 4 for the gear shift, which we'll get to in the future. But essentially, guys, I'm going to go away. I'm going to make all of the items that we need to set up our automated mechanical farm, and I'll be back in a second. And a little bit of crafting and shaft rerouting later, and we now have this little slightly messy looking setup right here, but as I mentioned previously, I think I'm going to build some kind of enclosure to make this look a little bit less out of place in the future. But essentially, we have our shaft power from our wind turbine going across, and then down to this gearbox over here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take our sticky mechanical piston. We're going to put that down for now right about here, and it does place down the opposite way to the way that you're facing, so make sure you do it from the back like so. And we also have an extra corrupted slime, which is actually very useful because we are, at this point in time, actually fully out of regular slime balls, and I would like to get at least a couple more because right now we are limited on how big we can make this farm by how many slimes we have, and you'll see why in just a second. But for now, we're going to put down our mechanical harvester on the front of the sticky mechanical piston like so. And essentially, the way that the mechanical piston works is it will extend any item attached to it, in this case the mechanical harvester, by as many blocks as piston extension poles it has behind it. So for example, this farm is 9 by 9, and so if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then we attach that to our shaft, like so. That is then going to go ahead and slowly but surely push the mechanical harvester all the way to the end of the farm here, and then if the shaft was rotating the other way, it would bring it all the way back. And this is the essence of the farm, because you'll see this thing is spinning, and if there was crops in its way right now, it would take those down. Now, it would seem that we are a little light on shaft power. I think that's because although the farm is 9x9, there are 2 extra blocks here, behind us, so we do actually need 2 more shaft to actually get that to go all the way to the end of the farm. That is not a problem. We do have some extra extension poles in our inventory, so we can push that just a little bit further. But essentially right now, this is not going to work because we need to be able to retract the piston, right? We need to be able to pull that all the way back. And there's also a slight problem in that if the pole ever gets to the very end, it will break your crops. Let me see if I can try and demonstrate this. So if I get rid of this and I put this back down, hopefully that will extend all the way. It will. Before we get to the crop breaking issue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this shaft with a gear shift, because the gear shift is a controllable rotation switch for connected shafts, which, as you can see, reverses the outgoing rotation when powered. So if we do this and we give it the old redstone signal, not like that, but instead with a lever, like so, if this is on, the piston will actually start to move backwards, which is fine. Now, what I'm going to do to kind of demonstrate this is quickly grab a regular Minecraft hoe, as well as some bone meal, just to make our lives a little quicker here. If we were to hoe the ground and then plant a wheat seed and fully grow that wheat, like so, without harvesting it, what we can then do is we can toggle this switch off slowly but surely. This is going to make its way over to the wheat, and we can make this faster in the future. But for now, just to kind of show the proof of concept, we're going to get this to go over to the wheat here. And as it crosses the wheat, it should break the wheat, but then leave the base seed planted so that the wheat can then regrow. Perfect. However, what happens eventually if you let this piston fully extend, if you let it get all the way to the very end of its extension, it will solidify and break the wheat seed. You'll see it happen in just a second here. Boom. You'll see it broke the wheat seed. And so we have to play a bit of a balancing game in that we have to turn the redstone signal on before it gets to the end. Because if we, for example, put down a wheat seed, let me pull that back just a little bit. If we pull that back like so, let's harvest, let's put some wheat down like that. We can push the mechanical harvester across it as many times as we like, and it won't break. It will only break if it ever gets fully extended. And so what we have to do here is set up a bit of a timer to make sure that the gear shift is always triggered right before the harvester gets to the end of the farm, right? So, much like with our tree farm, I've gone ahead and grabbed a regular sticky piston, a block of redstone, as well as a flex peter from the create mod. And then we're also going to need a little bit of redstone as well. And essentially, all we're going to have here is a sticky piston, which for now, I guess we'll put right about here, pushing a block of redstone, which is going to power a flex peter like so. I think I put that down the wrong way. That's fine. It's like that, I believe. And then that is, of course, going to go round to the back of the piston like that. But then also, it's going to go across and into this guy like that. And so what should happen here is, actually, I think I have put that down the wrong way around again. Let me switch that round like that. There we go. So right now we've set up a timer. The timer is currently set to trigger 20 times per second, which is clearly too fast. This is moving too much. I think right now what we probably want to go for is maybe about 8 seconds. We can start there and then see if that works. Essentially, we have to set the timer to how long it takes this piston to fully extend all the way out to the end here so that we can then have it fully retract all the way back and then finish. Now, given that our shaft power is currently quite slow, this is probably going to take a lot more than 8 seconds. However, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, there are ways that we can increase the speed of our shaft power to make it so that the mechanical harvester moves across much, much faster. Now, to do that, we're going to need a lot of cogwheels, and before we make those cogwheels, I'm going to sleep because once again, as per usual, I would love to not die to a stray creeper or even a stray zombie if I can avoid it. And so back over here, there are 2 types of cogwheels from the create mod. There are small cogwheels, which are just called cogwheels, and then large cogwheels, which are called large cogwheels. And essentially, the way that this works is, real quick, let me grab some food once again because we are quite hungry. We could definitely do with investing in maybe a better source of food going forward. The berries are not bad by any stretch of the imagination. They do a very good job and are surprisingly easy to get, but it would be nice to not have to eat quite so often. They don't do a great job when it comes to the saturation aspect, but Nevertheless, back to the cogwheels. Essentially, the way that this works is if you move from a large cogwheel to a small cogwheel, the shaft power is amplified. And so I think the best way for me to kind of show you this is probably going to be up here where our shaft already is. I'm kind of regretting building this so high up because it's a bit of a pain to get to. But all we have to do is get rid of a little bit of our shaft here. And we're going to start with a large cogwheel like so. So we connect the large cogwheel to our shaft. And then from there, we can transfer that large cogwheel's energy to a small cogwheel by putting the small cogwheel right about there. And what that does is it transfers all of the energy from this large cogwheel into the small cogwheel, which we can then send over again into a large cogwheel, which we can then send once again down to any of the four corners will work. For now, I'm going to go with the bottom corner for this one, like so. And the more you do this, the more the rotational energy is amplified. I think it's kind of hard to see it in action right here, but this shaft here is moving much slower than this shaft here. This is moving much faster than this is. And so if we don't die here, which we didn't, I'm going to go and quickly grab maybe 2 or 3 more large cogwheels so we can really amplify this a little bit more and see if we can't make this shaft power nice and fast. All right, so a few cogwheels later, and now you can definitely see the change in speed from over there, where it's moving very slowly, to over here, where it's moving quite fast. And you can definitely see the difference in how fast the mechanical harvester here moves. It now manages to get all the way to the end within that 8 seconds, and you'll see it's even popped off the wheat seed that was already there. And so now we do need to tweak this a little bit to bring the timer down to make sure it doesn't get to the end. But in practice, we've managed to speed that up quite a bit with just a couple of cogwheels going from large to small to large to small to large to small and then large to small once again. And you can really do this as many times as you like, making the shaft power faster and faster and faster. I've just done it a few times to get us back to where we originally were. I kind of wanted to keep my original, shaft infrastructure, as it were, intact. And so now we need to bring this down to maybe 6 seconds. It might even be faster than that. I think it's about 4 seconds maybe, but we'll give it a try. Does it make its way to the end? It does. We want to make it so that it doesn't ever get to the very end here. It might even be less than 4 seconds, maybe like 3 seconds. Yes, so we don't want it getting that far up. So let's try 2. Okay, so 2 doesn't quite get there. But 2 also doesn't get to the end. It's a bit of a balancing act because we want it to get not quite to the end, but pretty close to the end. Now, we might have to slow down our shaft a little bit because the annoying thing is that we don't really have the option to fine-tune things between seconds, right? What we probably need here is about 2.5 seconds, but our flex pizza can only do solid seconds. We can either do 2 seconds or we can do 3 seconds. You'll see that 3 is a bit too fast. So what we might want to do is try slowing this down a little bit. Now, the same tactic does work in reverse in that you can take a small cogwheel and transfer its power to a large cogwheel, and that will slow down the shaft power. Instead, what I think I'm going to do is just take off the last small cogwheel. It is going to mean that I have to redo a little bit of this shafting here because I'm going to get rid of this and this, and we're going to have the shaft run from here along and then down. Okay, so quite a bit of trial and error later, and I think I finally have something that I'm pretty happy with here. I ended up getting rid of some of the extra cogwheels to make it a little bit slower because there were a few factors at play here, and if the shaft speed is too fast, then you have to go with a really low flex pizza time, and the lower the flex pizza time, kind of the less granular you can get. Like a second ago, I was trying to make it like 2.5 seconds, and you can't do that with the flex pizza, and so there's a bit of a trade-off there where the faster your shaft power is, the faster you can harvest, but also the faster the shaft power is, the more granularity you lose with the flex pizza, which also makes it harder to stop the pole fully extending and thus destroying all your crops. And I think I finally found a nice middle ground here. So we have 13 seconds on the flex pizza here. So it takes 13 seconds to get all the way to the end and then 13 seconds to come all the way back. You'll see it gets just far enough back to where it should be able to break the crop on this block here. And it should get just far enough forward to where it touches this block but doesn't get to the end of it. There we go. And then up here we have 4 cogwheels, too small, too large, making our wind turbine just that little bit faster. And so finally, to give this a bit of a test here, what we can do is we can go ahead and hoe pretty much all of the ground here. We are going to have to be fast because we don't have any water down just yet. That is, of course, something I would like to implement when this farm is fully finished. But for now, we'll do this. We will grab our ring of growth, which is not spelled with any Isaac. It is spelled just with the I, and that should make this nice and fast in terms of growth. It only does break them on its way out, not on its way in, and of course, normally the crops won't grow this fast. I am thinking of bringing our Torturino out here to make this a little faster than, basic growth speed. This one didn't quite break there, and I am a little concerned about a bit of creep that's happening where I think every single extension is getting closer and closer to fully being extended. Like, I think it's ever so slightly moving because it doesn't quite hit the base of the sticky piston. If you know what I mean? Like, when it gets back here, it doesn't quite hit the base. Like that. And I think every time we do this, every cycle it goes through, I think it's edging further and further this way. So, in its current state, I think this might actually not work long term. I think eventually we might hit a point where this fully extends and breaks all the crops. And so, between episodes, I will tinker with this a little bit more to try and make it more efficient and try and make it work, as we want it to work. For now, I can't make any more of these because we need a lot more slime. The plan is to have a bunch of mechanical pistons going all the way along to the end here, and then having a bunch of mechanical harvesters all moving in tandem across the entirety of the farm to harvest pretty much everything in this 9x9 area. But to do that, we need 8 more sticky mechanical pistons, and right now we only have the 1 slime ball, and so doing that isn't really feasible at this time. But like I said, in the future, we'll go ahead, we'll expand this out. We will add all kinds of crops to this. You can do sugarcane. Actually, I'll show you guys that real quick here. If we grab a little sugarcane out of our system, and if we go and grab a quick bucket of water, the harvester will break any bit of sugarcane that is not the bottom bit of sugarcane. So it will harvest everything that is above the first one, and it will leave the first one there to ensure that more sugarcane can grow in the future. You'll see this did break here, which is not what we want. You'll see that the timings are not quite right there. I think it was creeping forward. But nevertheless, real quick, before we wrap up, I will go ahead and show you how this works. We'll put down some water right about there. We'll put down sugarcane right about here. You can't really show this off too well because I can't bone meal it, although the Ring of Growth might work here. I'm not too sure. But either way, the main point is that as it goes through, it won't break the bottom bit of sugarcane, and as you saw there, it did break the top bit, which is real nice. And so going forward, if we can get the timing right so that it doesn't do that and actually break everything, we should be able to set up a fairly easy automated powerless farm, powerless in the sense that it doesn't require any redstone flux or any constant supply of fuel to run. And I think it's a pretty cool, pretty nifty setup. But for now, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's episode of FTB Unstable there. As always, if you did enjoy the video and you want to see more FTB Unstable in the future, be sure to go ahead and hit that like button. It really does help out a lot. Leave a comment down below, subscribe if you're new here to get notified as soon as new videos go out. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.